Hey guys, it's Lumen. Welcome to the video version of my article, Time to Become a Ryu-Main. If you want to read the text article, check out the link in the description below. Many thanks to Rennie for letting me write on the blog section of our website, PDX Academy. As always, product is your #1 option for all translated news from the JP server, so go check out the website and bookmark it for future reference. Okay, so time to become a Ryu-Main. After the debut of Mystics and Spectres, Seina had deservedly taken the shining spotlight as the next meta-defining leader in the then-new landscape dominated by the dungeon Ruler of Hell's Halls, or otherwise known as Shura 2. In the same vein, Mikage had also gained considerable respect for his unmatched potential, though his daunting orb requirements and intensive playstyle led many to favor Seina. However, as unrealistic as it sounds, there was actually a third top-rating mystic in the event. Though Ryumei did get some hype before his release during Christmas due to the release of Santama, he was widely considered to be the worst animated card during the event's debut. However, Ryumei recently received several substantial buffs as a birthday gift to Ninin, Ryumei's artist, which increases his relative value in comparison to fellow contemporaries such as Seina and Mikage. The question is, by how much? In this article, I want to first see what changed for the better in terms of endgame content, and then go over some basic team construction ideas specifically tailored for Alt Ruler of Hell's Halls, or ASR2. Keep in mind that my intended audience consists of endgame players with extremely well developed boxes, and that the dungeon context is mainly Ruler of Hell's Halls and its alternate version. So some of the rhetoric may feel foreign if you are not part of said intended audience and or aren't familiar with the aforementioned dungeons. I will also primarily be focusing on Ryumei as a lead, so I won't be talking about his sub-potential. Impact of the buffs. So what changed? When Ryumei first debuted, I was pretty optimistic about his potential, despite the vast majority of players dismissing him due to his inferiority to the other two mystics. In fact, I had a lot of fun running a full system team in Alt Guardian of the Demon Gate, or Ultra 1, and watching him absolutely demolish every spawn in the dungeon. However, it was when I started to tackle Ruler of Hell's Halls that I realized how glaring his weaknesses were. Though there are a couple difficulties that are inherent to Ryumei regardless of buffs, the main problem before his buffs was his brutal shield activation inconsistency. Previously, Ryumei would activate a shield off of matching an L of only fire or light orbs, which meant that you were pretty much screwed if you didn't have enough orbs of either color. Though Ryumei himself does reduce the inconsistency quite a bit with his active, the potential of orb troll is still very present, especially when you factor in enemy skills that remove fire and light orbs from the board. Think about floor 2 of Shura 2 and Ultra 2. If you didn't get flamey or shiny, you had to hold your breath and pray that either fire or light orbs were spared by the unfriendly slimes. Now, you can match an L with any 5 orbs, even with hazards or hearts, so the shield activation is guaranteed on every floor unless enemy skills interfere with the board. Going back to the slimes, the buff allows Ryumei to stall much more freely, as orbs are now only needed for damage and not for survival. Though you still have to be wary of a couple spawns, like the Will-O-Wisp on floor 6 of Ultra 2, the newfound orb flexibility of the leader skill means that Ryumei can stall much more easily on any given floor. Furthermore, the buff also reduces the extreme dependency on the active to generate orbs just for survival and lessens the requirement for poison and jammer resistance. Speaking of the active, another major difference is in the impact of the active on overall team construction. Previously, Ryumei only generated orbs and added 3 combos in exchange for having no Skyfall for 1 turn, but now he buffs time and unlocks orbs as well. Essentially, what this means for the team is that you can completely ditch whatever sub you were previously using for active unlock and time buff, which would probably be Venus, but could also be Horus. Now, you have an extra sub slot to fill in whatever utility you need. Don't forget about the additional skill boost in the pre-transform form. Having even one more greatly aids in team building flexibility, so potentially gaining 2 by running 2 copies of Ryumei is immensely valuable, especially when you consider the solutions to Ryumei's inherent inability to pierce void shields. We'll cover that a bit later. Though the multiplier buffs may be a bit minor, increasing the health multiplier made it easier to reach the threshold of 150,000 HP, which has become an unofficial benchmark for Shura 2 Ultra 2 because that amount of health allows you to tank hits on floors that would otherwise require a shield. Think of the Ogre floor on floor 5 of Shura 2 and floor 4 of Ultra 2, Sun Quan, floor 10 of Shura 2, floor 9 of Ultra 2, and the gem floor of Ultra 2. And while a slightly improved attack multiplier doesn't significantly change any interaction with specific enemies, at least to my knowledge, more damage is always helpful in a dungeon where the spawns have health and defense values in the hundreds of millions and in the billions. Alright, time for the team building part. I'm going to be assuming that you are running Ryumei for both the leader and helper due to his overwhelming multipliers. Alt Ruler of Hell's Halls, Ultra 2, is just a really annoying dungeon that is packed full of mechanics while also amping up enemy damage to ridiculous levels. Over time, players have figured out some general guidelines for team building that usually improve the chances of successfully clearing the dungeon, such as the health threshold of 150,000 HP. In my mind, every team running Ryu-Main and Ultra 2 should prioritize these 3 things first before filling in the rest of the team. Number 1, 25 effective skill boost. Number 2, a void shield solution. And number 3, a cleric. Without these things, I'm going to be extremely skeptical about the viability of your build. Skill boost options. Though it seems like skill boosts are being heavily supplemented by haste and or delay equips such as Harvest Loot and Red Ford card, amongst many others, these equips are generally quite expensive, which means that not everyone will have access to them. Thus, it may be easiest to simply run a card loaded with skill boosts in order to ease skill boost requirements on the rest of the team. Keep in mind that Ryumei already brings along 4 skill boosts, so running 2 of them means you already have 8 skill boosts out of the 25. In terms of pure skill boost sticks, there is none better than base Valeria. What's great about her is that not only does she carry around the most skill boosts in the game, but she also has a great active that can be very valuable in dealing with various situations, such as Will-O-Wisp potential full heartboard and the floor with Okuni Nushi and Liu Bei, as a refresh negates Okuni's mortal poison board, while her recovery buff overrides Liu Bei's recovery debuff. The recent run of DBDC was also very valuable, as Valeria recently received Unbindable Awakening and has the option to either gain yet another skill boost or stick with Fua for a Super Awakening. Valeria's major downside is that she has absolutely no personal damage, which is a little unfortunate for a dungeon that squeezes every ounce of damage from the teams that attempt to clear it. However, I will say that Valeria is full to the brim with utility and can definitely serve as a sub of successful teams running Ryumei. Other alternatives include Mayoi Hachikuji, Super Reincarnated Thor, Mega Woken Kana, Reincarnated Raw Dragon, Mega Woken Yogg, and the Kamen Rider X8, amongst many others, but all of them feel quite subpar in comparison to Valeria, since each option brings a lower amount of skill boost and provides less utility despite having better damage. What I personally prefer nowadays over pure skill boost sticks are subs with low base cooldowns that you can inherit a haste or delay on for a more effective skill boost, since you can treat the inherit as a one-time use and then spam the low cooldown active for the rest of the dungeon. Viable bases include base Gung-Ho Minerva, Mega Woken Raijin, Super Reincarnated Venus, and maybe even base Shinji Hirako from Bleach. In terms of personal preference, I have to say that I really enjoy using base Gung-Ho Minerva, but I also feel like Mega Woken Raijin is an interesting sleeper option. Some great haste and delay equip options are Harvest Loot, Demon's Blood Talismans, Shinji and Rei Keychains, Glavenus Hellnova, Spirit Dragonwood Horn, Swords of Revealing Light spell card, Dark Magician card, Kaname's Paper Fan, Dream Dimension Detective Shelling Ford card, and Spirit Ally Morphea. Of course, there are definitely more than just these, but these equips are the ones that caught my eye while looking around. Void Shield Solution. One large aspect of Ryumei that has remained the same despite his buffs is his interaction with damaged Void Shields. Ryumei, for all his personal damage, does not have VDP and probably wouldn't even want it due to the way the Awakening interacts with L Unlock. Furthermore, because the leader skill also requires matching an L to activate, matching a box on top of that makes the board quite cramped when matching combos. Thus, Ryumei must outsource a solution for killing spawns with damaged Void Shield. There are a couple ways to solve this issue. Of course, you can run subs with VDP and deal with it that way, but I dislike this due to the reasons mentioned above, not to mention that the subs with VDP will also need to be able to deal tremendous damage, since all the damaged Void Shield spawns are quite tanky in Shura 2 and Ultra 2. Some options include Halloween Cotton, Remdra 5 Pools with VDP SA, Mario from Draconic Orchestra, Super Reincarnated Thor, and Academy Apollo. The unfortunate part about running VDP as the solution to damage void shields is that Ryumei will not be able to leverage any of his massive personal damage against shielded spawns at all, since the team is forced to rely only on the subs with VDP to pierce through. In my mind, the cleaner solution is to use an active that negates damage void shields so that Ryumei can blast through the enemy spawn. If running a void active, I think there are 3 viable options. Number 1, Dire from the Sacred Relic Dragon Saga. Dire is probably the best option for Shura 2 and Alt Shura 2 due to his low cooldown, the additional shield effect, and his double team HP, which compresses quite a lot of value for a card that was originally slotted in just for the active. For example, I personally use the shield as a nice insurance policy for the potential full heart board on floor 6, and then the active will recharge in time for when I need it versus Ganesha on floor 9. The attached shield is also great when going up against Gillies, because as you pop the Void active to bring Gillies below 50% HP, you also want the shield to protect yourself from the ensuing moveset of Awoken Bind into gigantic hit. The main drawback of using Dire is that he carries no skill boost, which places a larger strain on the rest of the team to make up for the lack of skill boost. Dire is also bindable pre-transform, which means he either needs an equip with Unbindable Awakening, or the team needs to use a Cleric active on floor 1 to remove the preemptive bind. Number 2, Fagan Rai, Godfest exclusive. Though Fagan Rai may look like the inferior option compared to Dire, he does have some advantages of his own. Fagan Rai's Void active lasts for 4 turns as opposed to Dire's active lasting 1 turn, which is valuable when going after Gilly's Legato because it gives you a much larger window to kill the boss. Furthermore, the additional burst is also quite nice since you want to kill the enemy as quickly as possible when using Fagan's active. Another advantage over Dire is the consistency of personal damage. While Dire technically has the higher ceiling with 7C, 7C, 10C, 10 combos is actually pretty difficult to reach while matching L, even with Ryumei's active. Thus, Fagan's quadruple 7C will most likely output more damage over the duration of the dungeon and will be far more consistent if and when you need the damage. The problem with Fagan is that his active cooldown is a lot longer, which really stinks when there are frequent void shield spawns that are separated by a couple floors, such as Ganesha into Sharius, or when you need to reuse it again on Gilly's Legato. Granted, this isn't that big of a deal since Ryumei is exceptionally good at stalling due to his ridiculous recovery multiplier. Furthermore, the burst is more useless than useful since if you use Fagan's active to deal with Sharius, the spike will be overridden immediately by the next floor's debuff unless you somehow get the rare invade of Scheherazade Dragon. The spike also only buffs Dragon type, which means no burst for the cards with only God type. Last but not least, we have the much vaunted equip Asuroga Kambaru. This equip is actually strong not only for its short cooldown and void effect, but also because it carries a valuable skill boost and boosts damage with an L. The drawback of the equip is probably the loss of the base card's active as you reach the later floors, since you will need to use the void active quite often. It also sucks that the cooldown will be somewhat long, although as previously stated, Ryumei is exceptionally good at stalling, so recharging the inherited active shouldn't be too much of an issue. Some great inherit base options include Super Reincarnated Venus, Base Gung-Ho Minerva, Reincarnated Diao Chen, and even Ryumei himself. Though there are definitely other void active options such as Crimson Draco Blader Akain and Sin Dragon of Envy Jevi, I feel like the rest have too many glaring weaknesses that would require the rest of the team to heavily compensate for. Akain in particular stands out to me as a massive skill boost stick that also has a shield with her Void active and has great utility in her awakenings with L and Fua, on top of her super awakening selection of full hazard resist, but her long cooldown mandates a ridiculous amount of stalling that I find slightly distasteful. Cleric. While this last requirement isn't strictly mandatory, I find that a Cleric is usually the best way to deal with the various binds, awoken binds, and unmatchable orb statuses that are repeatedly applied as you progress through the dungeon. A Cleric can be defined as a card with an active that clears multiple statuses that the enemy applies, such as binds, awoken binds, and unmatchable orb statuses. Of course, with Ryumei's activation flexibility, it might be possible to simply ignore some of the awoken binds and unmatchable orb statuses, but having a Cleric will most likely improve your chances of success. It's why Christmas Gremmery has attained such popularity due to the dominance of Sena. I see 2 Cleric options that stand out above the rest. Number 1, Christmas Tamatra, otherwise known as Santama. An amazing Cleric that reduces binds, awoken binds, and unmatchable orb statuses on a reasonably low cooldown while also including a haste. Santama is amazing because it can be used on almost every floor with a bind, awoken bind, or unmatchable orb status. The only floor it can't solve on its own is floor 1, but you can make it work by using Santama and then stalling the rest of the bind with a delay. The haste is also really useful as an extra effective skill boost. Santama is also pretty great because it can survive the lead swap on floor 5 of Alt Shura 2, floor 6 of Shura 2, and packs a ton of utility in its awakenings. Super Blind Res and 2 Fat Fingers are both nice to have to help alleviate player skill issues, while L Shield can theoretically be used to lower health requirements even further. And of course, 4 skill boost is very welcome in reaching the 25 skill boost needed to transform Ryumei. Number 2, Lagiacrus from Monster Hunter. Buffs from the last run made Lagiacrus into a beast of a cleric, as it fully clears all binds, awoken binds, and unmatchable orb statuses, and generates enough light and water orbs to match L unlock, which could have been great against Will-O-Wisp of floor 6 of ASR2, except for the fact that floor 7 casts an awoken bind and unmatchable orb status lasting 5 turns. Lagiacrus' awakening completely focused on damage with triple L and triple 7C, as the dragon is nearly strong as Ryu-Main and can surpass him by equipping just another L. Unfortunately, Lagiacrus' leader skill is nowhere near as tanky as Sentama's leader skill, so Lagiacrus will probably need a shield, delay, or possibly elite swap latent to survive floor 5 of Ultra 2, floor 6 of Shura 2. To be honest, picking between Lagiacrus and Sentama in terms of the active is like picking between a red pen and a blue pen. The differences are there, but none of them really swing in favor of one card. The major difference between Lagiacrus and Sentama is in the awakenings. While the latter carries tons of utility, the former simply focuses on damage. In my opinion, I prefer the utility of Sentama over the damage of Lagiacrus, since Ryumei is already outputting tons of damage. Lagiacrus would only be useful in killing some of the last floors a bit faster, while Sentama will provide valuable utility throughout the entire dungeon. Of course, other clerics can be used, such as Tuala, Diamond Remjar Temples, Artura, or Christmas Gremry, but all of these have some undesirable aspect for Ryumei. Sentama and Lagiacrus are the clerics I find to be a cut above the rest. Other notable cards. After filling in for the aforementioned roles, it is likely that there is an empty subslot left. For players without Dire, that 4th subslot could potentially be a shield active, such as Super Reincarnated Indra, New Year Maeda Keiji, Reincarnated Tachibana Ginchio, and Super Reincarnated Raphael. However, since Ryumei can reasonably reach 150,000 HP without too much difficulty, it might be preferable to inherit the shield and run some other tech choice to counter a certain mechanic. One card that has seen quite the resurgence in popularity is Base Ideal from DBDC. In the past, she was once famous for being the first card to have triple 7C, and though she has fallen off quite a bit since everyone has that set of damage awakenings, Ideal has been buffed significantly to the point where I think she is now an elite sub option for Ryumei. Her active delays for 2 turns, which translates into 2 effective skill boosts, generates a full rainbow board, and voids attribute absorption shields for 2 turns. The delay is great for floor 1, not just because of the delay providing more skill boosts via stalling, but also because it's the perfect amount to stall for the rest of the preemptive bind if you have chosen to use Sentama. Furthermore, the full rainbow board can be used to counter Will-O-Wisp on floor 6, and the color void is perfect for getting through Sharius. Lastly, her unconditional shield means that Ideal is a pleasure to temporarily swap into when getting lead swapped on floor 5. I haven't even mentioned how great her double team HP are for reaching the threshold of 150,000 HP, or how powerful she is with her Force 7C via Super Awakening. Though I once regretted the fact that I traded for Ideal on a whim, I now rejoice at my questionable decision, for once again, Ideal lives up to her name. Another sub that I used even before the buffs to Ryumei is base Gung-Ho Minerva. Not only does she have substantial personal damage via triple 7C and great utility through super poison resist by Super Awakening, but Gung-Ho Minerva serves as a great inherit base for haste and delay equips as previously mentioned, who also has a great base active that provides a gemstone burst based off time extend on a ridiculously low cooldown. I find the active extremely helpful for killing off the Dragon Seed and for blasting through spawns on the last floors, such as the Monster Point Dragons and Gilly's Legato, not to mention the value of overriding anti-burst effects on a whim. This flex subslot will be filled in differently by everyone due to subjective box constraints and team building preferences. Just make sure to cover what you need for Shura 2 and Ultra 2. Venus. Though the entire article is focused on running Ryumei in Shura 2 and Ultra 2, I do want to highlight Super Reincarnated Venus as a far more accessible option that you can pair with Ryumei for the same dungeons. Venus has been significantly buffed in many respects, and her leader skill now boasts only slightly inferior multipliers for the same playstyle when compared to Ryumei. The one thing I do want to point out is that Venus boosts light attribute as opposed to Ryumei boosting dragon and god types, so pairing the two together will restrict the possible pool of subs quite a bit. Personally, I'm excited to try Venus out once I manage to clear with double Ryumei. Conclusion. Ryu-Main has undeniably risen through the ranks of endgame leaders and has firmly solidified his position at the top of the current meta due to his much improved consistency in activating his shield to constantly maintain his bulk. In addition, Ryu-Main's active skill buffs have not only made it one of the longest animations ever, but also compresses great utility into the active via the time buff effect and the unlock. which opens up much needed team building flexibility along the additional skill boosts added to pre-transform Ryumei. I've already cleared with Ryumei before the buffs, and in my experience running Ryumei after the buffs, it honestly feels like the main constraint is the player, as most of my deaths are simply flubbing in out, or not paying attention and doing the wrong thing. Hopefully, I grow some brain cells and get my act together to clear. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed, and good luck and have fun.